I remember when you first started. That's so funny. I remember we had all these other employees, and you kind of just. I almost feel like all the employees with DHM have just kind of like blended into my life,
Right,
slowly.
yeah.
Except
Yeah.
the only one that was like abrupt was Britton.
Yes.
Britton is like the only like abrupt person to enter into our life. But you, because we were part of the same church network and all that. But how did you get into doing what you're doing? I mean, why don't you first tell us what you do, and then talk about how you got into all that?
So I am the head of media at David Hernandez Ministries, and I typically oversee all the productions. I oversee all the projects that go on in the ministry. And, I first started, I didn't really start as an employee. I started off like with almost everybody else in the ministry as your brother's friend. I was the kid at the youth group who would go over his house because we shared a lot of similarities. We loved movies, we liked TV, and we were both just kind of like nerdy in our own way.
Like that's so generic. We love movies and TV.
Yeah, exactly, right.
But I think the kind of movies you guys like,
Right.
very nerdy
Like-
and yeah.
Like, what's it called? I know at our youth group, like, there was a lot of like skateboarding and it was tight, but I couldn't really, not that I couldn't be myself, but I felt like at the time I couldn't show that nerdy like side of myself. So I usually hung out at your guys' house at Norwalk. And then I don't know why, for the longest time, I never told him I was into like I actually knew how to like operate a camera or edit on a software.
So you started doing that way before.
Oh yeah, way before. I grew up skateboarding when I was 13. I remember going on YouTube for some time, and I would watch skate videos on there, and then looking up to those pro skateboarders at the time, I was like, oh man, like me and my friends need to like hop on this and get on YouTube so we could just be out there, and maybe people from the high schools will see us and like
So I get the-
so we could be cool, right?
Yeah.
So I remember they had like a dad cam, and we would record skateboarding with that. I think it was like a Sony Cybershot. I think that would.
I think I know what you mean by a dad cam, but what is a dad cam?
Right.
What is
So
that?
the dad cam is one of those cameras that one of those older ones where you could like slip your hand through it, hold
yeah,
it like
there's a little
this, and then you would go like that.
That's the little viewfinder or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And if you use it, you gotta film it like this, like that.
That's how they do with the phones now.
Yeah, exactly. They do that. I don't know why they do that.
They take the picture like this.
Maybe they're farsighted. Yeah.
Oh, man.
So I did that. And then funny, I didn't know I was like good at editing, or I had like a natural like talent for it, even though the friends that I hung out with at the time were always like, oh, like Timmy, like what the heck? This is a sick video. Oh yeah. So I became like the filmer and the editor of the group
Yeah.
at the time. So moving forward in high school, in my junior year, my mom introduced me to one of her friends at work. He was an occupational therapist, but he was also a part-time wedding videographer. He like loved like filming and movies and everything too. So that was his side hustle. So she introduced me to him. His name's Dennis, and we hit it off pretty well. He's pretty youthful. He's a fun guy, and he became sort of like my first real like mentor in that way. He taught me the basics of camera operations, storytelling, big time. I remember in high school when all of my friends would go out and skate and sometimes party, I would just be out filming weddings, making money like on the side.
So it was really good for you. In
Yeah.
ways that you probably didn't even realize at the time.
Right, exactly. In my head, I thought it was, all right, I'm filming, I'm going to these venues so I could eat for free and get paid. Yeah. And that was pretty much how I got started with media. And I got familiar with YouTube by just watching skate videos.
And so you were doing all these things on the side, and then you were hanging out with my brother,
Yes.
and you were hanging out at the house. I remember seeing you at the house. What year was that, do you think?
I think that was 2013, 2014. I think
man, so
2013 was a lot of hanging
I was already out of the house.
Right, yeah.
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 I would see you there, but I didn't live there.
Right, yeah.
It's definitely, those years are all so, again, they're just a blur of
Yeah,
like what
it's-
happened.
It's a blur. I don't even remember meeting Steven. I don't remember meeting Steven at all, which is crazy.
I feel like if you were to ask me, the only person I really remember is probably Marcel.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just like this blur of like, oh, I just know you. And this was even before social media was like a big thing.
Yeah. I felt like at church at the time, like I only remember meeting like a few people like formally. Like I remember meeting Joel, I remember meeting Danny, but everybody else was just sort of a blur. I think the first time I met you, it was outside in the Paramount Church parking lot. And I remember Joey Lara like challenged me to a game of skate.
That's when we met? I remember that day.
I remember that. It was funny because all the BG guys were trash talking Joey, and then all the Paramount guys didn't even know me, were trash talking me, but I thought it was hilarious.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
it was lighthearted. It was fun.
So you got into to video stuff. You were on YouTube. Then you're hanging out with my brother. Kind of, what was that transition like to say, okay, hey, can you come help doing what we're doing?
Right. So your brother is one of my best friends. I respect him a ton. I love what God has put in his heart. So when he had asked me to volunteer at Encounter TV, I just said, yeah, I'm down. Let's do it. I remembered during my free time, I would just go to the studio in Lawndale, California, and I remember just wrapping wires. If they needed me to grab something from the car, I started out as a production assistant. And like I said, I just liked helping out. And I think eventually, just like how any ministry would, the more responsible you are with little, the more your brother started to trust me with even camera operating and editing. So that's how it kind of got started in the earlier years. That was about 2014, around there.
I remember the Lawndale studio.
Yeah.
I remember that. And so you started assisting, then you went to camera work. And then we had that transition where we went to the Paramount Church, and that became the studio. And then we all started working together in the office.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was fun.
Good times, man.
That was fun.
Good times.
It was some of the best times. What do you think was some of the most challenging parts of starting that kind of work, getting into ministry, going from, you're doing weddings and I guess in from the outside looking in, it would seem like you're like taking a step backwards by volunteering, and now you're doing this ministry, which I think nobody outside ever thought like, oh man, this is going to be something big.
Right.
Right. And so how did your family react to that? Was there any like pressure to say like, hey, don't do that, do something else?
Oh yeah. I'll start by saying that there was pressure like in myself because I've always been a big guy that emphasized like integrity. Like even in skateboarding, if I didn't land the trick, I didn't want to post the picture. So that kind of translated into ministry media because at the time I was still a newer believer, and I didn't really understand and grasp like concepts in the Bible, and I felt like I couldn't take my artistic capability to the full level, to its full extent, because I was like, oh, what if I mislead people if I put this image up on the screen? Like, oh my gosh, I didn't spell check myself back then often, so I would spell scripture slides wrong on your brother's videos. He would get so mad at me. It would be like Holy Sprit instead of Holy Spirit.
Holy Sprite.
Holy Sprite, yeah. So those were some challenges in myself. I didn't have like the confidence to represent like God in that way, so I felt super insecure. And my family did give me a lot of pushback as well, because even though I was doing media wedding videos on the side, my major was occupational therapy. Both of my parents are in the medical field. And, if you're in the medical field, you're almost guaranteed a job because, it's the medical field.
Right.
So for me to sort of just kind of step away from that after putting like 3 years of work into it was just kind of shocking to my parents. And, just like any good parent would, they would freak out and go, oh my gosh, like, what are you doing? Like,
throwing your life away.
Exactly. And it was their money I spent on the college
Thanks,
courses.
guys.
See, I know, thanks. But I'm doing media instead. Yeah.
So was that like a long season? Was that like a one-day conversation? Like, what did that?
Oh, it was definitely a long season because, at the time, so I grew up Catholic, and I think I don't want to speak for all Catholics and Catholic families. But I feel like it's more of like an in group, almost like I don't want to use the word cult, but for lack of better words,
Right.
It kind of get like cult-ish, like blood in, blood out, like so. When I started going to church, I'm stepping back in the timeline a bit. When I started going to church before meeting your brother, meeting all y'all, I was already getting pushback from my parents.
wow.
So I felt like when I was doing media with your brother, with the Christian ministry, it even added more gas to the flame. And so I was met with tension at home. Not that it was ever so bad that I needed to like leave and I wouldn't talk to my parents, but conversations would be awkward. I think that's why a lot of the times when I was in college, I would go to your brother's house or your guys' house in Norwalk. I pretty much lived there.
Because of the tension at home.
Right, yeah. I just didn't want to go home to a conversation that just kind of felt like that was just pressuring, especially like, being a full-time student at the time, doing some side hustle work, trying to like study the Word of God. And often too, like it was pretty tough. I felt like those were the two things that I was like met with when I first started doing media.
Do you think that your media ministry, the YouTube stuff, helped solidify your relationship with the Lord? Like, and when did that happen?
Oh, wow. If I understand your question correctly, I will say that because I didn't want to represent God like falsely, and I had like a conviction to represent Him.
Let me ask you
Yes,
this. Was that because you honored God, or was that because you were more concerned about people saying like, "Oh, Tim doesn't understand this"?
Oh yeah, it was definitely the second one.
So
for
was
sure.
it about the honor
Oh
for
yeah,
God?
yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah, I was gonna. It eventually turned into that, but I didn't. I just didn't want to look dumb in front of my friends.
Right.
I didn't want to look dumb in front of your brother because like I said, I esteemed him, and I didn't want to be his friend that didn't know like the Word of God. Because
Did you ask him a lot of questions? Or
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. But when it pertained to like media, like I was just embarrassed to. So I would just either just bite the bullet, not communicate, or just kind of read like on my own, like in front of the computer when I was editing. I'm like, oh, what does this mean? Like the Holy Spirit, like does what? Oh wow, like God like did this for us. Oh, Jesus is the priest king. Who's that? Like, all that stuff. So
And so
that's how I felt.
God started kind of working on you. And now we get into like where we're at today, right? You've gone through this journey of obviously a lot of obstacles and a lot of hurdles to do what you do. God took your talent of what you learned when you were younger and what you enjoyed, what you were good at, and kind of put you in this place. And now we call you like the YouTube genius, right? Like you understand things about YouTube that none of us understand. And I think whenever we're talking about our channel, a lot of times the conversation is, well, let's talk to Tim. Let's see what Tim thinks. Let's get Tim's. So what do most people miss about YouTube? What do most churches missing with the concept of going online, building a community, learning the algorithms? Like what would you say is something that's like, man, there's a really fascinating part of YouTube that a lot of people miss?
Right. So I feel like a lot of churches, at least the ones that I've seen, and what YouTube has fed me in my personal algorithm is they usually film their services almost to like document it, just to kind of like film it, keep it as a file, and just store it away forever. And it doesn't feel like it really connects with the viewer. So if you look at you would think a media guy would know how to handle himself around equipment, right? So
You can set it up really good.
I know, right? I can set it up real good, but I'm not good at operating it myself. So I was gonna say, I feel like if you look at these big YouTubers, they connect with the viewer in a way that's so personal that they almost feel like they know them. So a lot of the times when churches film their services or they film stuff about their church, you're it almost feels like you're putting an organization in front of somebody, and you almost feel it almost feels like faceless, like that there's no personal connection. And I feel like that's where a lot of churches and some like ministers like miss the target when it comes to this stuff. And I really feel like if they put a lot more effort into connecting with the individual behind the screen, then they would see fruition with it. Was that what you were kind of asking?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think something that came to my mind is almost like you could either use YouTube as a window to look in or a door to be involved.
Right.
And
exactly.
I think this is where even I would say even our church, we probably made some mistakes because we say things like social media is a window for people to look into the church and to see what it's about. But now what you're saying, it's almost like, well, if I'm looking in somebody's house through a window, I feel unwelcome and I feel like a creep, right? Like It's not like I don't want to be that person. I want to be welcomed into the home. And I think what you're saying is we neglect to build around making the viewer feel a part of what you're doing,
right,
instead of just watching what you're doing.
Exactly. I feel like, yes, like you are supposed to create content for YouTube, but at the same time, I feel like the way I think about it is you have to create content for the person. Because a lot of the times, you could just create content. Oh, it's a Sunday sermon, upload it, and then, your YouTube channel looks neat. There's like that carousel of nice, consistent thumbnails and everything. But does it connect with people? Like, can somebody click on the video and it starts off with someone paying attention to the viewer and saying, hey, like today, like we're going to talk about this and this, as opposed to a wide shot of the church and it's like, good morning, church. And like, it's like they're not acknowledging anybody. Like I like the way you said it. It's like if somebody was just kind of peeking through like the glass and they almost feel like an outsider in a way. So
I want to ask you a nerdy question about this, like a data question.
Oh, let's go.
And it's almost like maybe, I don't know, I feel like I'm just getting a bunch of information that we could use.
Oh no, it's good. Let's do it.
Let's say I have a church YouTube channel. I'm, pastor. I don't have a big staff. I'm just looking at my channel and I'm thinking, okay, how do I even know if my channel's engaging? How do I even know if, like, when you said, you have these nice thumbnails but is it engaging? And it's like, okay, well, I don't know. What do I look at? What do I go to?
Right. So on YouTube, if you go to the back end, the YouTube studio, there's this analytic point called AVD, which means average viewer duration. So the way I like to kind of put it is, okay, so this might sound kind of weird, maybe aggravating to some, but you ever talk to somebody and you can have a good conversation with them and you're like real tuned in, you're paying attention, you're going back and forth. That's what pretty much AVD is in the YouTube world. It's the time spent watching to and paying attention to the video. So if your video is 10 minutes long and your AVD, your average viewer duration, is 8 minutes, you did a great job. You kept that person's attention for 8 minutes. So in the same way, sometimes when you talk to your friends, maybe you're just not interested in what they're talking about.
You just zone out.
Yeah, you zone out.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what a bad AVD would be. You can look at your YouTube analytics on that end, and if your video is 10 minutes and your AVD is 2 minutes, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
You lost them at the 2 minute mark. So if a minister was making a video, if a church is making a video, that's something you would want to pay attention to because AVD is pretty much the viewer's satisfaction. Like if it's what they're interested in seeing. And, I feel like a lot of the times AVD can also be affected, like what we were talking about, how sometimes content can come off like impersonal.
Right.
Or maybe another thing is sometimes a minister or a church can address the YouTube audience as we instead of you. But it's funny, a lot of the times when people watch YouTube videos, it's an individual behind the screen.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like
that's a weird concept, right? Because most pastors, you look at your church as like a congregation.
Yeah.
So when I'm preaching, I say we and not you intentionally so that it doesn't feel like I'm calling individuals out and leaving myself out of the message.
Yeah, on YouTube it's the other way around.
But on YouTube it's the other way around. It's like, well, there's only, you could have 200 views, But that's, 200 people by themselves watching
Right.
this channel that they want to feel connected with.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think
even
that's
if you're
awkward,
like
though.
at a watch party and the content creator says you, even though you're in a watch party, you still connect.
Right.
Yeah, even better.
But I think
So,
that's such an awkward
yeah.
transition for a lot of pastors.
Oh, for sure.
Especially, I'll
Yeah.
say this, especially for me, right? So like
Oh, yeah.
we have a smaller church. And I'm like, it's so weird because I would talk to my brother and he'd be like, you got to look at the camera. You got to say, hey, if you're watching this. But
100%.
And I would think, man, it's so weird, especially if you know on your channel, you're getting like a view, you know what I mean? And you're like, hey, you feel like you're talking to, nobody. And I think, how do you get beyond that? What would you tell a pastor or a church who's like, man, we really want to do something good on YouTube? How do you get beyond the awkwardness of transitioning from just focusing on the in-person service to starting to pay attention to online viewers?
I think doing other pieces of content like this, like podcasts, or even like almost like that formal lecture talking head type podcast could help pastors break out of that, because it literally just puts them in front of a camera and they just run it and they teach it. Or, like I said, podcasts like this, because it's one-on-one.
Yeah.
So the more a pastor could preach or talk or disciple a person one-on-one, which I believe most pastors would, they could easily kind of translate it, or they could seamlessly integrate that skill into the service. So I know a lot of the times what Pastor David does is he will greet the congregation as a whole collectively if there's an event, but he immediately looks right at the camera and he goes, to you watching online. And I felt like even since the beginning when he was on TV, he already kind of had that skill where he would just connect with the viewer right away. He would talk to the camera as if it was an individual. Like I said, this is kind of strange at first.
Yeah, it is.
But, those things could help sharpen your skills.
Before we get back into the rest of the podcast, I want to shout out our sponsors, David Hernandez Ministries, and all of the partners there, and also the partners of the Bold community. If you want to sign up as a financial partner to support this podcast, you could do that on our website. Also, we have dropped brand new merch that I know you'll love, so make sure you pick that up on the website as well. Where do you think YouTube is headed? What do you think the future looks like?
I feel like it's headed more towards content like this, or it's long form, uncurated conversations, because I hate to get political right now, but there's a lot of distrust.
I love that you're getting political.
Yeah,
right now.
all right,
So
let's go.
That's good.
Let's run it.
Let's do it.
All right. So there's a lot of distrust in the mainstream media, and people kind of conflate that with a lot of distrust in authority. So the more something looks polished, the more something feels scripted, the more people feel like they're being just indoctrinated or just advertised to. So where I feel like YouTube is headed is with content that just allows open dialogue, honest thoughts, kind of random moments, things that a normal conversation would actually have. I've even noticed it in not just church channels, but just channels that I follow, content that I follow, whether it's like fitness or the news and all that stuff. And I even react to it the same way. If something feels too like organized, I immediately swipe away, or I turn it away. But it's weird. The more a thumbnail looks authentic, genuine, what I'm seeing in the thumbnail is what I see in the preview, like 5 seconds into like my cursor hovering over the screen. I click on it right away. So YouTube, I felt like it comes and goes in terms of like quality and authenticity. It always kind of like teeter-totters in a way. When YouTube first started, it was just primitive. Like people had no choice. It was just the Wild West of it, right? And then there was this stage where all the organizations we knew started hopping on it. So organizations like Nike, Adidas, all these big companies started hopping on it, and they would post their videos and ads on there and everything. And people thought it was cool. People liked it, probably because people had just come fresh off of television and they were cool with it. But then there was this movement that started I think I was in high school at the time of the, like, I like to kind of term it like the individual authoritative like period where you had content creators like Ryan Higa, Smosh, what is his name? Nice Peter, Epic Rap Battles of History. Remember those? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah. So it was there were content creators that they were individuals, like nobody knew about them. Like they weren't traditionally like famous, but they became like authoritative on YouTube. Right. So they almost became the brand themselves, and people put a lot of trust in these creators. And at the time, iPhones couldn't necessarily live stream onto YouTube. The technology to live stream and create content wasn't accessible to everybody except to those individuals. But then, as technology progressed, I think we're in a time where it's not necessarily like the individual authoritative like figure, like part of YouTube anymore. Like we're in sort of like the individuals now. Like anybody could have a voice now, and it's almost become like a leveled playing field in a way because anybody could, since everybody has access to this technology, anybody could have a voice, and depending whether or not the viewer, so the YouTube feeds the viewer content they want to see and watch,
like the devil.
Exactly. Like YouTube and all these platforms, they placate to what you want to hear. Like, so
I always think it's funny when there's guys like, dude, I can't get on Instagram because there's all these pictures that tempt me. I'm like, bro, like that's your algorithm.
I know,
dude.
I'm like, the algorithm saw something you clicked on or
You set
scrolled
that
on.
up, buddy.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So I'm like, so in a way, everybody has a voice. Everybody can have an influential voice on YouTube or any other social media platform because one, they have access to technology that. Pretty much they have access to all this technology now. You can do everything on your phone. And then two, and the algorithm appeals to the individual. So the algorithm will feed you something that you want to hear. And if this individual from across the world just says it, despite how many views or subscribers they have, it'll just feed you it. So we're at that place where the field is leveled and anybody could just have a voice.
So YouTube is pointing the direction of what did you say? You said quality but authentic.
Yeah, quality and authenticity. I feel like there's a delicate balance to it, and a lot of at least the content creators like I follow, like you guys too. There's this guy Nick Bear that I follow. He has like a great balance like of quality and authenticity.
Yeah.
And I remember I was explaining this to some of the guys at the studio the other day. You can have like great quality content, as in like the lighting looks great, the camera angles are nice, everything is nice and sharp, audio is dialed in. But I feel like the authenticity comes in how the individuals kind of interact behind the screen. So that's what I mean by authenticity. Not like if the quality is like 480p and like we're pixels on screen, it's better. Yeah, I feel like you could have both. And
well, it's funny because Marcel and I will, as we're trying to learn, continue to grow, we'll look at some of these videos that have like 100,000 views, and it's this guy just on his phone in the car with like terrible lighting, and I'm just like, how the heck? Like, how is this? We're over here working our butts off trying to get nice lighting, the cameras, the audio. And this guy's getting all the views just talking about, I don't even know what they're talking about. But.
Right, yeah. And I think it's because, going back to what I said earlier, it's just that a lot of people who take media at face value, they conflate the high quality productions with being indoctrinating and people just feel like they're being advertised when they see something super nice. So in the other way, which I don't think we should think about this, I don't think we should think about media like this completely, but just because something, just kind of looks authentic on the phone doesn't mean like
It's
like
really authentic.
it's really authentic, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is kind of cool though, because it's almost kind of like a window into somebody's life, kind of like a glass box, what you were talking about earlier.
I think of it like for us personally, like for this channel, for me, like I'll tell Marcel when we're talking about these things, like I just want to do what I would do.
Yeah.
Right. So if there's a YouTuber doing something that's working, but I wouldn't do it in like real life, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? So I feel like that is a part of the authenticity, and there are some people like, I mean, we all see them, these young streamers who just do these dumb things. It's just for the attention of,
oh man, yeah.
And it's like, you're just doing that for the attention, not really being yourself.
Exactly.
And I think
clout chasing.
I'd rather be myself and get, and grow that way.
Yes.
Than pretend to be somebody else and be like somebody else and grow that way. And then I have to be two different people.
Right.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So what about churches that are too late? Do you think there's anybody too late to jump on YouTube, or ministries, or anybody, even podcasts? Like I feel like we're like behind, because we're just launching a podcast, and I think what episode is this? Like 10? 10?
Is it 10?
This will be episode 10.
No, I don't think it's too late for anybody to hop on this stuff. I feel like you could easily just start with like you said, you just use what you have. Use your phone. If you have a camera, use your camera. If your church has, if your church is resourceful, invest into equipment. You just never know who you're gonna touch, like on the other side. I don't think we should approach it that way. I don't think we should look at organizations or churches or ministers on YouTube who have a big following, a big subscriber count, and be discouraged by that. Like I feel like, excuse me, your voice is important, and not everybody is going to listen to that minister, as in like not everybody is going to be fed their content. But somebody around the world for some reason may be fed your content. And there's this one story actually. So just to put some context, we have content meetings at the studio, and usually in these content meetings we plan out what the thumbnail and title are gonna look like, depending on what Pastor David wants to minister. So there was this one time in the Cerritos studio where he preached an encouraging message, just a general encouraging message. I remember he had said, I just feel like the Holy Spirit is telling me to be encouraging. I want to uplift people. So filmed that content, and when we were in the meeting, we had talked about what the thumbnail is going to look like. We said we're going to put this woman on the thumbnail, and she's crying, and it's going to be black and white just so it looks more dramatic. And then I remember we were having trouble with the title, and then we just go, okay, if somebody was in distress, like what would they want to search up? And I remember we titled it, if you're feeling like overwhelmed, watch this video. So made that video, title, thumbnail, posted it. Cool, done deal on our end, right? And then there's this man in Northern California, and I believe, I'm trying to remember the testimony from the top of my head. This was way back in like 2015. He had said that he had just lost his son in like a car accident or something. So I think like there was one night he got like just like drunk, like out of his mind, and he was about to commit suicide, which was, I mean, it's pretty crazy. Like he said he had like a gun to his throat and everything in that testimony. And then before he was about to end his life, he said something like, oh my gosh, like I'm so like overwhelmed. Like I can't like do this anymore. I can't live anymore. And then Amazon Alexa in the background says, now playing. If you're feeling overwhelmed, watch this video.
Oh my gosh.
And according to the testimony, your brother came on screen, and it started with his usual YouTube hook or his YouTube hooks where he appeals to the viewer. He's like, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you feel like, life's got you like on the ropes or something. I don't remember exactly what he said, but the man said the power of the Holy Spirit met him there he somehow got sobered and he gave his life to God on the spot.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty crazy. So, like, your voice matters on YouTube. I don't think it's ever too late to start a YouTube channel. Like I said, you just never know what your content, what your message could do. Like that message, and at the time in 2015, we weren't what we were now. Like we were just posting it and just creating spirit church stuff. We were just doing what God has called us to do, and what, like I said, what your brother had felt to preach at the time, and that was the impact of it. Just, it was a crazy story.
That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, when I tell the story, I usually choke up, but I'm
You held
good.
it together.
Oh yeah, I held it together
hoping
for
you
the
would
Bold
cry.
podcast.
I was hoping
Let's
I was like,
go,
this guy needs
dude.
to cry.
It's all right. It's good.
This would be a
content
great
still.
clip. This would be a great clip if
It's
I see a
good
tear
still.
roll down.
You could AI integrate a tear on me.
Well, you know, that's where we're headed, right? AI. We're not going to need pastors anymore. We'll have AI.
Exactly.
I'm
The
kidding.
Tesla bots are going to preach.
Tesla
on stage.
bots. I think we had just said that when one of our pastors meeting. I was like, just get a Tesla bot.
Yeah,
They'll-
man.
They'll take care
There
of
you
those
go.
things. Man, that's an incredible story. That is.
It is,
That's
man.
like.
I'm
We got to
getting-
put that on the YouTube 3-minute clips. That's a good one.
Yeah,
That's
you can
such a-
splice me up too. There were some details there.
That's-
Yeah.
Oh, I don't. Yeah, I think there's probably a word in there we can't use.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll try it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But man, that's incredible. That's a crazy story.
You want to hear another one?
Yeah.
This was around that. Oh,
Yeah, I do.
It was in the same time frame, and I usually tie this story in with God teaching me a lesson, with being faithful with the little. So, there was this one time I wanted to go out and skate when I was working and editing. And I remember I got into like a little argument with your brother. My fault, by the way. Right? And I remember going like, oh my gosh, like, why do I have to edit this video? It's not going to be released like until yada, yada, yada. I want to go skate with my friends. He's like, Tim, he's like, I just need you to edit this video. Like, it's fine. He very calmly approached me, right? Corrected me, rebuked me, the whole thing. So I edited this salvation video. It was a message that he had preached at one of his miracle services, and I needed to edit it. So I edited it, but I edited the video with, just kind of in the wrong mindset, with the wrong heart posture. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, whatever, like, screw it. I didn't put that much effort into like the thumbnail and everything, even though I probably told him I did. Right?
Did you do your best?
I
Is
know,
this your
do your
best?
best. This is my best, right? So I did that, I uploaded it, and I guess that was it for me. Going out that evening, and I went to go skate with my friends. Meanwhile, around the world, there was this guy who grew up in the Middle East. He had explained his background. He had said, so he had watched a salvation video, and in his testimony, he had said he grew up being indoctrinated to hate Christians, and he would often see his family kind of like ridicule Christians, yell at them like on the streets. I think they were Christian missionaries they were talking about or whatever in the Middle East. So he would often see that. He would go to like schools, and they would teach him to like hate Christianity. And the evening he watched the video, he was in the back of a truck, and he was with his peer group, and they were gonna go out, and I don't know if they were gonna like beat up these Christians, or kill them, but they had said they had like guns loaded in the back of the truck, and they were on their way to where they knew Christian missionaries were. And they said, oh yeah, we're gonna go there and we're gonna do our thing. We gotta stop this here. So they were on their way there, but he got curious and he said, I wonder what like this Christianity thing is. Like I've never heard the other side. I've always learned to hate it. So he looks up a video on what Christianity is. He might have typed salvation or something, but once he looked that up, our video popped up, and I think of this is crazy because he in the back of the truck with like loaded weapons. Imagine that. He gets this video, and it's of your brother. It's of Diga. It's crazy, and he preaches a salvation message, And that man said he felt the power of the Holy Spirit again, like touch his heart in the back of that truck. And he said he had gotten saved right there. So once he had gotten saved in the back of that truck, he had told his friends and his peer group in the truck, and he said, hey, like, we got to stop this truck. And they're like, why? He's like, we can't do this to these people. Like they believe in like the real God. Like in that moment, he was transformed, which is pretty crazy. And to wrap up the story, long story short, he left the country he was living in, and he moved over. I think he legally moved over here. I think he lives in the East Coast now. And ever since then, he's been going to church, and he said his life has been transformed. And I think that's actually really crazy. Like, it
is crazy.
It's super crazy. Like these two stories, like, oh my gosh, like it was literally life or death. Like with these people, well, with one person trying to take their own life and the other person trying to end like lives. Yeah. But God was able to use YouTube. God was able to use the message that your brother spoke, and just change the course of the future.
And I think what's so crazy is that I feel like people will hear that story and say, "Well, that's them." You know, they got 2 million subscribers, and but the truth is, like, you started somewhere, right? You know, my brother started in the garage, you know, in the church, and it's like, if you don't start, you don't know what. If you don't start, you don't know what lives are not being impacted, right? Like if you don't just you don't know how lives are going to be affected if you choose to be afraid or choose to wait another year, another 2 years, and by then you're going to say, well, it's even later now. I missed it. And I love what you said. Like, your voice matters. It matters that we speak, especially in today's world. Like, there's so there's no hiding the culture's agenda, and there's no hiding what they think about all these different issues that the Bible is against. That the Bible clearly is like, no, that's not the way we live. You know. Think about like the transgender lifestyle, you think about like the homosexual lifestyle, you think about abortion, you think about all these different political issues that shouldn't even really be political, but they are. And our culture has really, without any shame, preached their message. And then we have Christians on the other side, like, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait. It's like, no, now's the time. The voices need to be loud. The church needs to be doing this. And I love that you said that your voice matters. I think that's so true. And I love those are good stories, dude. Yeah, those are great stories. Yeah, I think I had a question here about the spiritual rut, but I think you kind of answered it with those videos. Like they push you to do greater things and to keep seeing that what you are working in, the field you're in is making a huge difference. That's crazy, man. You know all the ins and outs of it, and are there any YouTube channels that you would recommend that you'd say, man, these are some good people to get inspiration from? Right. Okay. So one content creator that I just thought of right away was, oh my gosh. Right. I just thought of him. Craig Rochelle. Okay. Craig Rochelle. Oh man. His content looks great. It's nice, clean cut. And he preaches a good word. It's really inspiring to actually see and be a part of his live stream. You could tell, like, you know, they run a tight ship. All their buttons are up, or what's the phrase? They have their buttons dialed in or whatever. I don't know. They're all buttoned up. Yeah, they're all buttoned up. There you go. That's better. The shirt's buttoned up. All their buttons they're suited up, right? They're there. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. That's one. Okay. Josh Howerton, Pastor Josh Howerton. Josh Howerton. Yeah, he is a pastor in Rockwall, Texas. That's where Isabel and I got married. So we actually stumbled upon his church, I wouldn't say on accident, because I was visiting for Thanksgiving one time, and Isabel and I wanted to go to a church. So we went to Lake Point Church, which is Pastor Josh Howerton's church up there in Rockwall. It's like 10 minutes away from Isabella's parents' house. Preaches a great word and has a good YouTube channel. I've actually reposted him a couple times on Instagram. What does it look like?
white guy, talks about politics with the Bible. He has all these viral videos.
I feel like I know who you're talking about, but I'm not 100%
Oh yeah,
sure.
he's got a great YouTube channel, great Instagram. He preaches a solid word. It's biblically grounded. So he's another content creator. And then I follow some other content creators that aren't necessarily Christian, but they do kind of have like some wisdom. I know one of them is Chris Williamson. You know him? Yeah. Even though he might not be hitting all the targets when it comes to like morals, the morals that Christians have and everything, he has a pretty good like wisdom. And then actually, I'm not just saying this because I'm a huge fan, but Nick Bear, he is. If this makes the viewer feel better. He is a practicing Christian, and he often does talk about his faith on his podcasts and his content on YouTube, even though it primarily focuses on fitness. You could tell a lot of the things he talks about in his videos, even though they are like heavily fitness related, routine related,
Right.
dietary related, like you could tell it's influenced by Christian morals and
Right.
everything. Sometimes he'll even like quote scripture. And talk about scriptures that inspire him too. He had Pastor Joe Champion on recently.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I seen that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
seen a little clip of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Joe Champion. I would love to get Joe Champion. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
he's
Such
tight.
a huge church out here.
Yeah, Celebration Church.
So to close this up, how has you talk about these other YouTubers and all these guys? How has personal discipline helped you in maintaining the job that you do with the excellence factor?
Right. So, the job requires. Yes, the job requires a lot of discipline. There's a lot of things always coming down the pipeline with projects, a lot of deadlines to meet, and the expectation is high. So, I almost kind of have to set up something outside of ministry to kind of keep that structure. So that usually falls like into like fitness. So in most mornings I wake up at 4:45. I get to the gym by like 5:20, 5:30, and then I'm out of there by 7. And then I go home, I read, and after that what did I do? I walk my dog, and then I try and keep a rigid pattern in the beginning of my day, and I try to conquer a lot of the physical tasks in my day, so it translates into the mental and creative tasks in the day. Because if I start off the day and I'm able to hit the weight I'm hitting or run the miles I'm running, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I did the hardest part of my day, like on my body. Now I could just sit in a chair and keep the same rigidity and just be creative from there. So the way I like to think about it is, if I'm doing a set of dumbbell presses and I have 3 sets, 10 reps, that's all I have to get done for that set. I kind of sort of take that mentality and put it in my work, where the first thing I do in my email or when I sit down at my desk is I go, okay, I got to do 5 sets of like emails, and I try and keep that discipline there. So
That's great.
Yeah, that's the way I think about it.
That's a good way to
It
think
is
about
kind of weird, yeah. Like, and then now you put that with, you take that, think about the whole workout, and then I do that with my day.
Yeah.
I kind of segment it that way because the emails are sort of like my warm up. It's more of like a communicative task, and then I try and save my creativity when my brain is like the most like active, which is like from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That's like the pattern I've observed in myself.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's weird.
That is the I think that's super interesting.
Well, actually, so that content creator Nick Bear, he said, like your body responds to how you treat it, and it's your exercise, your sleep, and your diet really affect that. So, and it's not just what you eat, what you consume, what you drink. It's when you do it and how you do it, and like the portions and everything. So, I really took like a big step back, like I think like 6-7 months ago, and I was like, okay, like I really want to see like what my body and mind are like capable of, and like really just kind of like see myself from like a third person. So, I put these disciplines in place, and then I go, oh my gosh, like my, after a while of keeping like a routine, I'm like, dude, like my body knows when to like expend energy. My body knows like when to like keep energy. I actually see a pattern every day where I am the most creative and cognitively functional from like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So I leave a lot of my creative work into ministry in that time frame. And everything else from like 3 to 6, 3 to 5, just more rigid, like organizational tasks.
That's so crazy.
It's weird because I feel like the more organized I am, the more structured I am, the more I could creatively like free flow.
Man, so
Yeah.
that's wild. So if you want a successful YouTube channel, you got to wake up at 4:45.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly.
That's the factor. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
That's an ungodly hour. I don't know.
Oh,
You're
no,
the 5
man.
a.m. club. That's
Yeah. It took a while to get there.
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I could never. Oh no, I don't want to say I could never. Maybe one day I'll be a part of your club. But man, appreciate you for coming on, dude. Love the
Appreciate you having me,
conversation.
man.
I think you have a incredible mind, and being able to pick it a little bit was definitely interesting. So appreciate you.
Yeah. I'm not the most effective communicator, but
You did good.
yeah, really?
You did. Yeah,
Oh,
you did
wow.
really good.
Thank you.
You did super good.
Awesome.
You
man.
didn't look nervous or anything at all.
Oh, wow. Well, if this content touches anybody or inspires anybody, I guess we did our job here.
You did your job.
All right.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. I pray that you enjoyed this content. If you did, make sure you leave a like and a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And when you subscribe, turn on the notifications so that you can be notified every time we release brand new content. We are doing podcasts every single week that I know you will enjoy.